Have you ever heard that word about alligators? Alligators. 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 Alligators living in New York sewers. New York sewers. Oh, 猫ちゃんは眠たそうにしてますね。猫ちゃん。Since a long time. Have you ever heard the one about the alligator living in New York City? The story will go like this. A family went on vacation in Florida and then returns vacation to New York, bringing out the home with this pet. Well, the alligator with escape and finds a way in their reproducing. Grew to huge sizes and now strike fears to survival. Have you heard this story? Well, it isn't true, and it never happened. But despite that, the story they arrived since the 1930s. Well, how about the song "Twinkle Twinkle Little Star"? You know, "Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, how I wonder what you are." Well, we've all heard this song. Both the song and the story are the example of memes, and that's what we would talk about the theory of memes. A meme is defined as a piece of information conveyed from person to person. By this definition, most of what you know, ideas, skills, stories, songs, are memes. All the words you know, all the scientific theories you've learned, the role your parents taught you to observe, all are memes that have been passed on from person to person. So what, you may say? Passing on the idea from person to another is nothing new. No, the whole point of defining this merely a process as a transmission of memes is so that we can explore its analogy with transmission of genes. As you know, all living organisms pass on biological information through the genes. What's a gene? A gene is a piece of biological information that gets copied or replicated, and the copy of a replica is passed on to the new generation. So, genes are defined as replicators. Genes are replicators that pass on information about the properties and the characteristics of organisms. By analogy, meme also replicate and in the process pass on cultural information from person to person, generation to generation. So memes are also replicators. To be a successful replicator, there are three key characteristics: longevity, fecundity, and fidelity. Let's take a closer look. First, longevity. A replicator must exist long enough to be able to get copied and transfer its information. Clearly, the longer a replicator survives, the better at getting a message copied and passed on. So longevity is a key characteristic of a replicator. If you take the alligator story and get it for let's say my memory, I can tell you the story now 10 years from now. The same with the Twinkle Twinkle song. So these memes have a longevity because they were memorable for one reason or another. Next, fecundity. Fecundity is the ability to reproduce in large numbers. For example, the common housefly reproduces by laying several thousand eggs. So each fly gene gets copied thousands of times. Means, well, they can be reproduced in large numbers as well. How many times have you sung the Twinkle Twinkle song to someone? Each time you replicated that song, and maybe passed it along to someone who did not know it yet, a small child maybe. And finally, fidelity. Fidelity means the accuracy of the copying process. We know fidelity is an essential principle of genetic transmission. If a copy of a gene is a bit different from the original, that's called a genetic mutation. And mutations are usually bad news. An organism often cannot survive with a mutated gene, and so the gene usually cannot be passed on unless it's an exact copy. For memes, however, fidelity is not always so important. For example, if you tell someone the alligator story I told you today, it probably won't be word for word exactly as I said it. Still, it will be basically the same still, and the person who hears the story will be able to pass it around. Other memes are replicated with higher fidelity, so like the Twinkle Twinkle song. It has the exact same words 20 years ago as it does now. Well, that's because we see songs as something that has to be performed accurately. Each time, if you change a word, the others will usually bring you in line their sense. That's another thing, it's right? So, you can see how looking at a piece of cultural information as replicated as memes and analyzing them in terms of longevity, fecundity, and fidelity, we can gain some insight about how this spread persists or changes. Oh,